Last month, the Senate created the Climate Solutions Caucus. Now, this is a caucus made up of both Democrats and Republicans, and their goal is to meet with scientists, meet with activists, understand the science behind climate change, and then use their understanding of it and the words of these scientists and people who know what they're talking about to educate the other members of the Senate. I love this in theory, because in practice, this doesn't work. And part of the reason is because Republicans, for their part of the caucus, have already packed it with people who either don't believe that human beings are contributing to climate change or simply don't believe climate change is real at all. And that's a problem, right? You cannot convince these people at this point that climate change is real. It doesn't matter how many scientists you parade in front of them. It doesn't matter what kind of journals you hand them to read. It doesn't matter if you show them the graphs and the charts and the statistics. They won't believe that climate change is real. And do you know why? It's not because they're morons. It's because they're being paid by the fossil fuel industry to pretend that they don't understand what's happening. And that actually doesn't just go for the Republican deniers in this new Climate Solutions Caucus. This also goes for a lot of the Democrats. I want to read an excerpt here. This is from Sharon Zhang at Truth Out. She wrote this: only one member so far of the Climate Solutions Caucus signed the No Fossil Fuel Money Pledge, and that was Colorado's Michael Bennet, a Democratic presidential candidate who is not a supporter of the Green New Deal, and he's also the recipient of over $320,000 worth of oil and gas money in his time in Congress. The other three Democrats in the caucus, Jeanne Shaheen, Angus King, and Chris Coons, have received over $200,000 combined from the fossil fuel industry. Meanwhile, the Republican members of the caucus have received over $9.5 million combined, $7 million of which went to Mitt Romney alone. So, does anybody honestly think that this little Climate Solutions Committee, who between the Republicans and the Democrats sitting on more than $10 million in fossil fuel money, do you think there's any science that's going to convince them that those millions aren't worth it? Do you think there's any science out there that's going to tell them that this is a bad idea to sell their soul, to sell their children and their grandchildren down the river? Because there's not. And we know this because we have been trying to get this done for decades. For decades now, folks. And every time there is a new piece of scientific evidence, anytime there's a new report, anytime there is a new warning out there, these same deniers, your Marco Rubios, who, by the way, is on the committee, your Lindsey Grahams, who's also on the committee, your Mitt Romneys, who's on the committee, they always come out and say, well, I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I don't know how all this works. I don't know that it's real. Hey, Marco Rubio is the guy who said, I'm not a scientist, man. Okay, well, the scientists told you the thing, though. They said this is what's happening. Almost all of them. Except for the ones like you, Rubio, funded by the fossil fuel industry. That's what's happening here. This is what we call greenwashing. That's what the Climate Solutions Caucus is all about in the Senate. It's about making the public think that we're doing something about it. Making the public think that we care about this issue. When in reality, we're basically being funded by the fossil fuel industry. That's what's happening with this committee. That's what's happening with this caucus, and that's not going to change. The only way you get science denial out of Congress, out of politics, is to get corporate money out of politics. As long as the money flows from the fossil fuel industry to the politicians, regardless of party, nothing will change. Not a single thing. We've seen the reports. We've seen the extreme weather events happening on a monthly basis here in the United States. It's not like this is a far-off threat. We're dealing with the consequences right now. But money talks. Science walks. That's what's happening in the United States today. We can show them every report imaginable. We can force them to read every scientific study on the issue. But none of that for these politicians is going to be heavier than the weight of that check from the industry that they can't wait to cash. Thanks for watching, everybody. And don't forget, if you like what you see here, like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. And now you can also become a member of Ring of Fire and get exclusive early access to certain Ring of Fire videos all throughout the week. Just click on the little join button right below the video.